Welcome back. We're continuing our look at the human faces from Guantanamo, and joining us from Pittsburgh is Matthew Schofield, who interviewed many of the detainees from McClatchy. And here in Washington, I'm joined by Roy Gutman, McClatchy's foreign editor, who oversaw this series. I just want to point out also, by the way, we did try to contact the Department of Defense to get some comment on this, but didn't receive any response to get them to participate in this program. We have a caller on the line from London. Naveed is on the line. Naveed, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Riz. I just want to ask a question to both of your experts on the panel here. That if some third country were to be in conflict with some other country, and in order to get there, and if they were to go and kidnap people from that other country in which they were in conflict with, what would the United States response be to that?
Matthew, this is an interesting point that a lot of people brought this up, that had this been done by any other country, had laws been, international laws been disregarded, that perhaps there'd have been a huge cry of an outcry from the US, and it's essentially hypocrisy that the US did it. Did you get any kind of feedback like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, this would have been, if someone had practiced upon US citizens what we were doing to foreign citizens, the cry would have been terrorism. This is international terrorism, ripping our people away from their homes. I mean, I think one of the things that you find most, one of the reactions you get that is most strongly against what's going on at Guantanamo, is the fact that there is no system of law that governs what we're doing. It just seems to be kind of a let's grab people now and hold them, and we'll figure out why we want them later.
Well, let's get another clip from the investigation here. I want to get to the story of Ghalib Hassan, who's a former district chief who'd been arrested by the Taliban. Ghalib Hassan had this to say about his story.
او دا غینه مخکې عام چې د څومره ولسوالۍ وي د تورخم نه تر دغه پورې د شینوارو دا ټولې ولسوالۍ تر جلال آباد پورې مونږ نیولې وي. جلال آباد ته د طالبانو نه د ځمکې ټولې مونږ قبضه کړې وي. بیا دا خبره ورته مونږ وکړه چې زه په اینمپورم کې ونیول شم. په اینمپورم کې چې ونیول شم نو دریشي زما په غاړه وه. دا دریشي دوی د ما نه وشکوله.
Well, Roy, as I get to that you know, the sort of that kind of story, and Matthew's touched on this to some degree, how people were taken away. I want to get a quote from your investigation that, and then follow up with an email that related to it from Egypt. Now, this quote's from a former Pentagon official who comments on the way people were picked up, and this Pentagon official says, "Captured with weapons near the Pakistan border? Are you kidding me? The screening, the understanding of who we had was horrible. That's why we had so many useless people at Gitmo." Now, the email that came in from Egypt, from Aziz Rafat in Cairo, follows up on that. It's related. It says, how does the US differentiate between civilians who happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, many Afghans carry weapons without being combatants, and real fighters?
Well, the tragic thing is that when they tossed out the law, they tossed out the ability to process people in any kind of a rational way and determine who they had. They couldn't differentiate between possible participants in the conflict, and there's a legitimate right under international law to take them as prisoners of war, and those who were just simply turned over, say, for a bounty. And the fact is that then they held them without cause, and they were probably afraid to let them go. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the most interesting findings we found in this series was that of the 66 people interviewed by our reporters, as many as seven, if you can believe it, were working for the Afghan government, the pro-U.S. Afghan government. So, in other words, talk about the wrong guys. Right. These people should have been, we should have been listening to them and not incarcerating them.
Hardly builds confidence there. We've got a call on the line from London. Omar is on the line. London, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my name is Varialai Omar and I'm calling from Birmingham. I just want to ask one question, especially from the European countries. You know, they are proud of their democracy and everything, and we can see what's going on in the jails there in Guantanamo. You know, they are treating the prisoners, you know, like really bad. You know, they put them there, especially in Iraq, Guantanamo, they're treating really badly, to be quite honest. And this is not democracy they call, we want democracy, Afghanistan and Iraq. If we want to bring a democracy like that in the country, so we don't want any democracy like that.
Oh, Markel, thank you for your comment on that and the point. Let's get another one of the stories that came out from the investigation by McClatchy, and this is the story of Mohammed Nasim, who like many, said he was falsely accused. This is what Mohammed Nasim had to say. Now, there's another section of the investigation I also want to bring up, which relates to this, the issue of torture. And before I get the question to you, Roy, let's hear this. This is about how some of the torture that happened at Guantanamo.
Bagram, in particular, was pointed out as a place where physical abuse was rampant. In fact, most of the detainees we spoke to who spent time there said it was far worse than Guantanamo.
See, interesting, Roy, there. We had the first guy was explaining what he went through at Guantanamo, and then afterwards, in the investigation, you found actually the treatment many had before they got there, for example, at Bagram or at Kandahar, was even worse.
Well, in fact, we found that of those who had been to Bagram, that they all said, maybe 2/3 of them or 3/4 of them said that the treatment was far worse than in Guantanamo. Guantanamo was under the international spotlight, and there were journalists going to visit, there were congressional delegations, the International Red Cross, but at Bagram it seems to have been an absolute black hole. They just did anything they wanted to the prisoners, and we found a lot of people who said that they had been suspended by their hands from these iron grates. That picture is the most devastating one, the one that hand-drawn picture. So it seems like this was a pattern there. Look, I don't think it's because American soldiers are bad-hearted or something or evil intent. I think it's simply because they were untrained, because there was no law, there were no restrictions set, their officers didn't know what to tell them. The U.S. government from the very top down basically said, do what you want.
And a lot of group anger, sort of like communal anger because of September the 11th, because that was soon after September the 11th.
Well, yes, in fact, some of the guards there, and one of our reporters talked to former guards there, said that it was a case of seeking revenge for 9/11. But you can't do this if you're the soldier of a proper army of a major power.
There's an email that came in from Kenya, from Nairobi, and I want to put this to Matthew. And this viewer, Dadir, says, the only way justice can be served is to close Guantanamo and try the administration members behind it, regardless of who wins the White House. How likely is that? I wonder, Matthew, listening to the stories that you did and knowing what came out of this investigation, whether you feel anyone will be truly accountable for what happened at Guantanamo and perhaps even for setting up Guantanamo in the first place?
I think if you look at what's going to, the shakeout of Guantanamo is going to be very ugly for years to come. Assessing ultimate blame is going to be extremely difficult. In the end, does it all go back to Bush is the question. And do presidents, are they held accountable for decisions like this? And probably not. I think in the end, no, I think it will be closed. It will be shut down because it was a poorly conceived idea. But I don't think there will be any ultimate accountability. At the least you would hope that there is a massive lesson learned from this.
Well, let's get an email question to Roy here. This one came in from Winnipeg in Canada. Paul Graham wrote in saying, the US owes these men an apology and significant compensation. Unless Gitmo can be turned into a detention center for American and British war criminals, the sooner it's closed, the better. Did the subject of compensation, what might happen to these people, ever come up?
Well, even the conservatives who advocated basically dispensing with law and just taking in anybody we wanted to, even some of them have suggested that you must compensate those whom you've wrongly imprisoned. You must apologize to them. I asked our reporters when they went out to talk to the former detainees to document what were the documents they got when they left. Were they given more than a handshake? Were they given an apology? And the answer is no.
And many of the documents of the interrogators had, they were told to destroy them as well.
Well, that happened as well. But, you know, coming back to your earlier question, the truth is that we'll never know what to hold people to account for until we know the facts.
Right.
So that's the first thing we can do as journalists, is collect all the facts from all the detainees and put together the big picture.
Well, Roy Gutman, I want to thank you very much for that. We always run out of time. And Matthew Schofield, thank you as well, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. Don't forget, any thoughts or comments, go to riz@aljazeera.net, and we'll see you next time.